There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioners' future. This is just one of them.
Well, hello. How the devil are you? Dave Coplin here, coming back to you with yet another weekly live stream on the future of work. I say I just found the wake up button. And my God, show 20. That means more or less 5 months ago, we sat down and thought, wouldn't it be a good idea, given we've got nothing much else to do, if we did a weekly live stream on the future of work? And here we are. This week, we are going to have some fun. We're going to have some fun because somebody else has been having some fun, quite frankly. So if you recall, frequent viewers will remember last week we were back in school and we were talking about the future of education and where we should go from here. So while we're busy messing around in the classroom, look what happened. Amazing things happened in the future of work. We came to this wonderful headline from the Telegraph. Go back to work or risk losing your job, said a government source. Hang on, what's that about? Oh, that's about if I can't see you, you can't be working. It was backed up even better by this amazing, I'm going to have to bring it up to you to show you, fantastic article from Lord Sugar. This is on the 3rd of September in The Sun. I know. The country needs to get back to the workplace for all our sakes. I'm writing this from my Armshold Group office in Lawton in Essex. Well, excellent. Look at that. Lord Kitchener would be proud of what he's doing. And look, I don't want to take the mickey too much, but there are some things that we have to go to. One is, as we talk to, we'll come back to this picture in a second. If you go to Whitehall, the place is half empty. Where are they all? The government needs to say, get your asses back in there now. Same with the councils. Big business isn't helping either. Now, I love this rhetoric because this is all about us returning to work. This is all about us dealing with the pandemic. Just one final thing, because I can't let this go, and then we'll start the debate. I wonder who is his copyright. Listen, brilliant, fantastic choice of English sort of a metaphor for you. But the City of London is like a morgue. Is it? What is it? There's sort of rooms with dead people lying in it. It can't be. It's a ghost town, Alan. That's what the phrase is, a ghost town. And then there are so few people around, it looks like a bomb's been dropped. Well, listen, my mum and her parents know what London looks like when a bomb's been dropped, and it doesn't look like it does now. It's a lot cleaner and it's a lot tidier. And funnily enough, there are a lot less dead people lying on the streets. But apart from that, I take your point. Now, look, his point is genuine. I do get it. There are lots of businesses who rely on the office worker trade or even just the worker trade. It's the pubs, it's the restaurants, it's the coffee shops, it's the dry cleaners, all of those people. But actually, is this really about us returning to work? Is this really about a office layout that looks, there you are, back again, get your asses back in there now? Is it really that this is what we should be heading back into? Or is it simply that we're in a world that is no longer fit for purpose, for the requirements, for the situation that we're in? Is it right that we only have coffee shops in the centre of the cities where our offices were? I used to have a coffee shop in my village. Actually, it wasn't so much a coffee shop, it was this thing called a pub. But it shut down because we were all off in the cities drinking coffees and buying sandwiches from somewhere else. And then, just to bring this all together brilliantly, at the same point that we're talking about getting back to work, the government released this fantastic video today about face space and all of that sort of stuff. Just this haunting imagery of what happens when you're out in public. What do you make of all of that, Gary? This is just what a fantastic opportunity that we're now in, embracing the world of work. So here we are, we're here with Gary Burt. How the devil are you, Gary?
I'm great. I'm so looking forward to this week, because we're going to ruin all of the work that we've done, all of the good work over the last few months by completely ripping into everybody. I love that last graphic. I mean, that is out of the childhood of watching, your auntie come round, your 20 a day auntie come round, and it's like, auntie's in the corner, I'm having a fag.
Be a love, Gary, will you? Go and get the ashtray. Your auntie's filled the last one.
Yeah. Oh, it's on the carpet. Doesn't matter. Anyway, what's that sugar pose? Get back to work, as I'm on my yacht. It needs fueling.
Look, I mean, I get the sentiment, right? And I get that there are a lot of genuine sort of people struggling, or genuine people genuinely struggling as a result of this shift. But surely, wouldn't it also be great? Do you remember, I don't know, Gary, I'm sure this would have been true because you're up north, lad, is we used to have people come round in the pop van. So obviously ice cream van, but you also had the bread van and you had the pop van. And they would drive around.
Yeah.
Right. So why isn't there a Pret van or a Starbucks van do you know what I mean? If I were these companies and I would be looking at this, I'd be thinking about all of these sort of plummy middle class office workers who aren't standing on stations anymore or commuting into London, but are gagging for a fresh mochaccino with a almond milk frap. I don't know. I've just made that up clearly. Why aren't we encouraging them to change their business model, to think about, well, actually, that village pub that did close down and is still sitting empty 2 years ago, maybe we could reinvent that as a local community hub? Where's that conversation, Gary?
It's got to happen. I mean, there's a lot of organisations that have been successful during lockdown. I mean, during the early ones as well. And the common thing about them is they've evolved. The old adage of evolve or die is absolutely true. We seem, the problem with the government is that we're locked in this mindset of get things back to normal, and everything will be okay. Yeah, and well done, the Sun, for pointing out as if, the city is like a morgue, as if it's a bomb that's dropped. No, it's almost as if there's a global pandemic and people don't want to be in crowded spaces because that's the highest risk of being infected. Oh, yeah. And let's not forget, a few months ago, they were told to go home. They were paid to stay at home. This isn't something that's going to get back to work. It's all over now. No, it isn't. It's still going on. You got a vaccine, Boris? No, you haven't.
What this reminds
it's still
me
there.
Of is the Fast Show. Of course, I love the old Alan Sugar. Yeah, stalwart captain of industry. But if he were to come round here, coughing and a spluttering on me and my missus, I'd say, oi, Sugar, no!
The science has once again given the government a good spanking. You don't argue with science. It's not something that you can have a debate about whether it's true. It's science. It is. So if you're in the middle of a pandemic, global pandemic, do you have a cure? No. Do you have a vaccine? No. Should we send people back to work? Listen to the scientists. No. Okay, let's send them back to work. Send them back to school. See what happens. We tell everybody to relax a bit. Enjoy. Yeah, guess what? Infections have gone up. Yeah, so last week, the newspapers are saying go back to. This week, they're saying don't go and see your nan.
Yeah.
It's a farce.
Well, do you know what? So here comes a point of empathy, right? So there was an interesting piece on Sky News yesterday that correlated the sudden increase in infections with a sudden increase in testing, and so they adjusted the numbers to allow for more testing, and the curve that's sort of doing that is now much more gentle. It's going up, but it's still very much smaller. So I get all of that. And I get the government's position about wanting to, kickstart the economy or get the economy moving. But for me, it's the lack of discussion about actually is the business model, is the cultural model, is the economic model that we've got, fit for purpose for the life that we could now live in. I mean, the interesting thing for me, and then I'll just shut up, Gary, is you think about the market towns that many of us live in because they're accessible to places like London. And we've been moaning before COVID, we were moaning about the death of the high street and how all of these places were shutting down. Now, to me, the death of the high street is as much as a response to me buying the sandwich in London that you're now telling me I should be buying, as it is anything else. But where is the debate about, well, actually, hang on a minute, maybe Pret just doesn't need to, and poor old Pret, I don't mean to pick on you, you're just a fantastic example of lots of other people who are suffering in the same kind of way. Maybe just Pret needs to be more dispersed, or it's a different dispersion rate rather than being concentrated into the cities. Surely that would be as valid an approach in terms of helping them. And I get that there's a transition to be made, but that's got to be the way forward.
Yeah, I guess the first important thing is this is not a radio show, because if it was, we could just plug Pret and we'd know that they'd have some sandwiches sent round. So we love your super clubs. Absolutely love Pret. Yeah, no, this isn't a Pret problem. This is a societal problem. Go back to Mary Porter's. The decline of the high street is nothing to do with COVID. What COVID has done is accelerate a number of underlying shifts that were already happened. It's speeded them up. The challenge of school being relevant, the remote working, the death of the high street. What it's done is it's accelerated a load of change that was happening anyway. The one thing we know is, if anything, we know that we can't regenerate the high street in its current form. What you can do is you can throw a load of money at it and make a bit of a difference. But what's got to fundamentally change is the underlying concept of what you want to do with this. Yeah. Do I want to live in a high street that is full of shops? By the time it gets to 7 o'clock, is dead? No. Yeah. Do I want to go there? No. We've got to rethink this. So the starting point for this is not to think about the outcome, which is what do we do with the shops. It's to start thinking about what do we do? What do we want as humans? What do we want as people from these spaces? Get that right, and you'll get the solution. The solution will fall out. So how do we make a space that is attractive for me to want to go to? That's the thing that we solve. We make the attraction. We think of it as an attraction. This is why the get back to work was so wrong. Yeah. Why? Let's look at this. Let's look at this logically and break it down. Let's go back to work. Okay. What? On crowded trains?
Yeah.
On tubes with very little aircon, with a mask on, into an office with stale air where I'm sat close to people. I might have to keep wiping. I can work better from home.
Yeah,
the paradigm has shifted. It's accelerated, and something I read the other day. Even if we wanted to send people back to work, we couldn't. Why? Because in many buildings they've got to go into these infection chambers called lifts. And actually, we can't go and stick 15 people in a lift anymore. We know that's a really bad idea. So even if the office is spaced out, the lift can't physically get enough people into the 30 floors in the time that they've got to do this. They're going to be stood around for a couple of hours. Oh, with a load of other people in a crowded space. We need to rethink the model.
But it is, and it's this sort of systemic sort of review of it, though, isn't it? And where is the dialogue? Because you talk about the we've got to think about the shops, and the shops have already bloody gone for the most part. But actually, there's a whole challenge around rent and rates. So there's landlords and councils have got to rethink what do they want in those spaces. I think it's up to the brands like the Pret's, the Starbucks, of course, we're just picking on coffee shops and sandwich bars, but it's all of the infrastructure that sits around. And, it's a bit like, we've been talking about places like WeWork and even Regis, for a certain extent. Why isn't there a shared workspace that we can go to rather than having to get on the train, to get on the tube, to get to a place? All of these things need to come together to curate a world. I really would like to see it extend into the villages and the communities and the people who've lost their local boozer or their village shop, and actually say, God, wouldn't it be great if we still had a village shop or a place that we could convene or a place that we could get things? So it is this redistribution, I think, of the wealth, which technology makes possible, because I now can sit at home and do this, but B, starts to change the economic prospects of the entire country rather than a few epicenters. If you can have multiple epicenters, I don't know, but I'm going to take that across the country. But that debate just seems to be bereft. There's nobody talking about those things. And I think, and that's, and in the last half of our conversation, I want to come back to the kind of organisations that believe that getting back to work is the right thing. So I think we've got to take this really systemic view of what we do, what we want. I love the way you phrase it, Gary, that we've got what we want these spaces to be. And I think that's really beautiful. And I think my hope is that against the most terrible context, that coronavirus could be the making of the high street. It could be the rebirth of the high street and the hearts of our communities. That's what I'm going to go for. You up for that?
No, I love that concept. Let me play out the scenario that is the reality for most businesses in towns, in many, many towns. crippled by rates, crippled by rent, annoyed consumers because at best they're on exorbitant parking charges with aggressive enforcement. So you can't walk around and relax because you're worried about, I've got my free 1 hour, or I've got my £1.70 an hour. And if I go over by 5 minutes, I know that guy at the corner who's clocking me, he's going to be using his little device to go and issue me with a 50 quid ticket, 30 quid ticket. 60, what is it? 60 quid, 30 quid we paying, within 14 days. That's not an enticing experience. Also, I mean, flip it round, start with people. You want to get me into the town centre. Here's the paradox for councils. They moan, quite rightly, that they need the revenue. Here's the thing. If you don't figure out a way to get past needing the revenue, you're going to have no town centre. So you're going to have to really prioritise, what do you want to do? What do you want? Because, these towns that are continue to charge, have aggressive enforcement, are making them visitor unfriendly, forcing people onto buses. Okay, we like public transport, but maybe not at the moment. Yeah, exactly. Start to be more radical in making some changes. So to go, look, 2 hours free parking, 3 hours free parking. Yeah, it's going to be a bit crowded, but hell, you've got people in the town going in, spending money. Start to look at where you can, close some of the streets down. Go to the shops, have a conversation with them and say, what can we do to help? Can we allow you to come onto the pavement? Yeah, not make shops worried that they're going to get told off for encroaching on the pavement and blocking something and creating a trip hazard. Make spaces attractive. I mean, we're talking about very short-term measures here, but the actual reality is we need to rethink the concept of a town centre. We need to be making them not 9 to 5 spaces, but we need to be making them 24-hour spaces. We need to be, I mean, at the moment, if you look into what town centres are, these ridiculous rights of use and zoning things, we've got to just smash this up and start to say, yes, we can allow people to live in town centres. We can allow people to live. We can have community spaces. I mean, how many towns have got parks in the centre now?
Yeah.
With swings?
Yeah.
Almost none. Yeah. We've concreted over them.
But I mean, look, so let's go back to London. What do you think is going to happen in London over the next few years, assuming this doesn't change? Is all of those grey city, blocks are going to become living accommodation? And so the opportunity is there for this to start to happen, for us to start to think about it. But the transition is huge, though, isn't it? I think you've got a lot of these, landlords who have to completely change their business model, change their understanding of the kind of market they're in. Councils have got to do the same. But it has to exist in such a way. Essentially, I was thinking about it today, and I was trying to think. It's probably not in my parents' lifetime, or probably was at the beginning of their career, but probably in my grandparents' lifetime, there was a much greater distribution of access to resources, because you wouldn't be getting on a fast train into London or Birmingham or Manchester. You would probably be living in your, you'd be going to your nearest town. That would be where you would do all of your trade, and you'd have nearest city, and then you'd have your town or your village or whatever. But it's almost like a regression back to that world, only to bring. I've got no problem. Some people would be abhorred by this, but if Pret or Starbucks or Tim Hortons or anybody was to pop up, in my high street or even in my village, fantastic. Do you know what I mean? Just to start to see that commerce start to come through. And I think you could do it in such a way that wouldn't trash, whatever aesthetics of whatever village or community you're in. But it is this redistribution of access to the resources that we're bemoaning that people aren't buying now because they're not in one silly location that's a long way away. But it has to, I mean, the conversation has to go. Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and if anyone from Tim Hortons is listening or watching, Dave is the biggest Tim Hortons fan. I'm surprised you didn't big that up. I mean, we talk about
I threw it in just to see.
You are a Tim Hortons man.
In fact, actually, let me just reach over and get it, because I was normally. I should have said, and so if anybody from Tim Hortons is sitting, but that would be lost.
I think. I mean, let's get down to practical stuff. If you're a business in a town centre, you've got to start talking to the council and giving them, and start to get constructive with them. Look at what is possible. The second thing is look at how you can use that space. We've been in an environment where for the past few years, what are you doing? with the cables. You know, we can see it, Dave. Now, I think if you are a business, you've got to look at how you've got to seriously look at how you can start to make yourself attractive. How can you become a people space? I mean, the challenge of this at the moment is when, you know, COVID is making that really, really difficult, you know, because people can't get together. But so this is why we have to rethink it. We have to start, you know, aggressively rethinking, how do we get people into these spaces? How do we make these spaces attractive? That has to involve the organizing body. So the big landowning groups, the big corporate bodies that are owning land in town centres, because unless they start to work with their tenants to solve this, they're going to be left under a load of empty shell properties. And what's going to happen? They're not going to be able to make their interest payments. You know, remember Into this was their trouble. They were built on a scheme where the money needs to keep rolling in. As soon as the rent stopped, they're in trouble.
But it's,
so
I mean,
the big companies should be up for this conversation.
Well, but you've got to help them with it. I mean, I hate this being a sort of an adapt or die. Do you know what I mean? All of the stuff that we've done over the years, nobody listens. You're dead unless you do this. I mean, that might be the reality, but the better conversation is to so how would you like to be involved in the re-architecture of what our society should be in a post-pandemic world? You know, that or forget post-pandemic. Bloody hell, what am I talking about? In the 21st century, in a world where, you know, network speed is probably more important to us than bloody rail speed. That's the sort of invite that we need, and I think it's bringing those people and helping them understand. Because if you can imagine, if you are, let's really get the sort of focus. Imagine you're one of these really lovely, trendy hipster coffee shops that just set up a few years ago in London, and you're doing quite well, and you've grown through a few outlets, you know, but you're not big enough to have anything in the bank that's going to cover you for this kind of thing, and you're basically you're on your knees thinking, bloody hell, we're done for. Of course, you want people back in London. But it's helping people like that be involved in the debate about how does your business change to meet these new needs, and you know, progress a long-term conversation that is the right thing, that is neither, you know, get back to work, your Lord Alan Sugar needs you, but equally never go to the office because you know, you don't need to. It's somewhere in the middle, and I think it's showing those organisations and the big companies too, the big restaurant chains, the, you know, all of that stuff. That transition can be made and can be done. We just have to think about it, and that's maybe where the government. I look, of course, we're massively biased, but you know, rather than this horrible sort of shaming and guilt tripping, you know, get back to work. I mean, that's the other thing. We've got 10 minutes left, but I want to get into get back to work, or you'll probably be fired. Bloody hell! I mean, that's horrible. That's where the debate should be. So let's deal with that. This, you know, presenteeism at its best at a government level. I love it. You know, I'm used to dealing with the bums on seats memo when it gets sent to the members of an organisation, but I think what we saw on the weekend was the government send our entire society the bums on seat memo. Just you know, wonderful that we could even be there. How do you even respond to that kind of approach?
I think the world has responded, hasn't it? It's I'm not going to do any gestures. It's gone. Don't think so.
I meant to. Oh, bloody hell! I'm kicking myself. Did you see the discussion around the Dettol ad? And I'm saying Dettol. It was a brand of disinfectant. It might have been Dettol. I can't remember. We love Dettol, but send that instead of Tim Hortons. But it was, you know, it was a bit like the old Pepsi ad, you know, lip smacking, whatever. But all of the things that you've missed about the office, all of the banter and all that, and just think you'll soon be back embracing that because we've created a safe space for you. Well, of course, yeah, well done, Dale. But the response was, you know, basically the equivalent of everything I hate about the office, or why I don't want to be there, or why I'd be happy to be at home. But it shows, and there was an interesting point I think was made today. That this is about creating cultural division, and it's creating angst and friction between, like creating there's a right choice and a wrong choice, which I think is absolutely terrible in all of this. But it is about helping people find the way. So my thought to, you know, when the government sends the UK sends citizens the bums on seats memo, I think the citizens have to respond in the same way that they would do, you know, at work. You got to start asking your question: is this the company I want to work for? If you're going to send me the bums on seats memo, is that really right for us? How do I have a conversation? You know, can I speak to your boss's boss? Because maybe I can have a different kind of conversation with them about what's going on. I don't know who the boss
So who
boss
do I
is.
call
but-
Dave? I'm really unhappy with Boris.
Yeah,
co.
yeah.
I think we have to, the thing to do is continue to have an informed debate. The thing is, a lot of organisations are already past this. They've already had to deal with this. The firms in the city aren't going to tell people to go back because the government told them to go back so people can buy sandwiches.
Yeah.
Now don't get me wrong. We want to support those organisations, but this is where we need to have that conversation about how we move those spaces forward. It's not about telling people to go back to the office. To do what? Why?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. We'd be far better to have the conversation and start to intelligently move it on and be absolutely honest. And this is where I think the government has really got burned in terms of saying, okay, this is where we are. Let's move forward. And how can we do this in a people-centric way? How can we do this in a way that does allow this to? One of the best things I've seen. A couple of things that I've seen recently. One, it's put the concept of the 4-day week back on the table. Yeah. And when we say the 4-day week, that isn't Monday to Thursday. That's 4 days. Maybe those 4 days could be any other day. Maybe if I have to go into the office because I need the facilities in the office, I need some physical artifacts in the office. Maybe I can go in on a Sunday when there's no one there. I can still use the space. It's still unused. It doesn't need to be on a Monday, that's all. Why can't I travel in on or maybe can I go in the evening for half a day? Can I arrive at 6 and work till 10? Because I just need to be in the office because I need some of the video equipment, and I'll do that when the kids are with the nan.
But this is, I mean, we've been talking about flexible working, and the problem is when we talk about flexible working, everybody thinks about working from home. Well, no, working from home is working from home, and flexible working isn't just working from home on a Friday or working from your clients every Friday. Flexible working is not just about location, it's also about time. And you sent me that thread on the 4-day work week, and what I liked about that, and you've yet to have this experience because you've still got a proper job, but when I left the corporate world and started truly working for myself and running a portfolio that I do now, you suddenly realize Nick Morris has this great phrase about work, and how much of what we do is all work about work. And it's something ridiculous. It's in the 40% or higher. Nick's going to be sitting there screaming at the screen now saying, it's 60, whatever. Nick, it's a big number, right? And that's what you don't realize because you're in the middle of it all. And it's getting rid of that. I actually think you could probably have the 2.5 day work week, and you would get the same amount done if you could just be productive for those 2.5 days. Inevitably, there's lots of stuff that creeps in.
It's about getting over that mindset. This is something we mentioned a few weeks ago about caring, not about the time that it takes to do something, but about the output, about the job being done.
Yeah.
Do you care whether it takes me an hour or 3 hours? Because at the moment, a lot of the problems that we're seeing are because we're intrinsically linked. We're hard coding the output to the deliverable. Sorry, the input to the deliverable. Yeah. Well, if I can work more efficiently, what does it matter? If I want to work through the night, what does it matter so long as the thing gets done? And if for any company looking and thinking, if you have anyone shirking, if you're having to put software in, you failed because you have no trust with your employee. Wow. If you're having to put tracking software in, if you're forcing people to electronically log in and prove that they're there, you failed. You've failed in even understanding the problem. What you've done is you've denigrated that relationship to a transactional human machine. It's failed, and you've killed any creativity.
The horrible part of that, Gary, though, is in the environment we're in now. With the job market that we've got, people are going to have to tolerate a lot of that. It's it's worse than nonsense. I mean, it's terrible. And that's the challenge, I think, is there are lots of people, we've talked to organizations, but if you can't trust your employees when they're not in your office, you kind of got to ask yourself why you hired them in the first place, right? But we're beyond that level of thinking, and these often are the smaller mid-sized businesses. So I think part of this is broadening out that debate. Look, I think you and I and whoever is listening to this We need to figure out, there's more than one, I think, and it's more than, hi mum, hi dad, there's more than just me mum and dad. We've got to figure out, how do we bring this conversation forward? You remember our old friend Linda Chandler, who long has been a proponent of truly smart cities, and I'm not just talking about internet connected city, I'm talking about proper smart cities. I think that's part of the debate, and I think it's part of the conversation we've got to start equipping people with, so that they can have their end of it, to help redesign the fabric of what we want the society to be, how we want it dispersed, how we want it accessed, and help educate the government. I mean, I really feel for them, and I don't just mean the politicians, I mean the civil servants too, because it's a hard bloody job, it's a difficult position. And it's not to excuse some of the stuff, but it's to say, look, we got to think this through. And so if you're out there and passionate about this, then use your voice, get involved in those conversations. Tony is listening. Thank you, Tony. That's fantastic. I feel like, can I get a hell yeah? But we'll just not go there. But it is important for us. And we all have a part to play. And as much as we've bemoaned the death of the high street, and as much as we've bemoaned the loss of the village pub, or how terrible the commute is, or how much we miss the office, that's all part of that rich debate that we have to have as we start to, you know, and again, build back better, whatever phrase that you want it to be. That's where I'm at.
I think you're right to a couple of things. One is, if you are in an organization and you're starting to see these changes, open up that conversation.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a negative one. You know, it's a conversation. How do you start that? Okay, Mr. Smith, I've seen the changes. I think I understand what you're trying to achieve, but I think there's more than one way that we can do this.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with us trying something? Because I think there's another way that we can do this that delivers what you need to happen in a way that's going to be more successful for everybody. It doesn't need to be oppressive.
That's the conversation I'd love people to be able to have, you know, and again, I'm sure there'll be areas where it can't, but I would imagine there'll be lots where it can, where it's a proactive conversation on behalf of the employee. So look, I get what you're trying to do. How can I help you solve that problem in a different way? And show people the stats that we all know, the things that we all innately know, that actually, you know, working in a dispersed way over time and overall leads to better outcomes. And it's not to say it's perfect, and it's not to say we're without our challenges, and the dogs do bark and the kids need help and all that stuff and goes on. But actually, for the most part, it beats a lot of the other rubbish that we have to deal with in terms of getting to work and doing the things that we love to do for the organisation. I think that's a really lovely place to go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think, you know, if you want to have that conversation with your boss, one of the other things is think about what you can bring to the table that's new. What can you put on the table as an offer beyond what you're doing today? So you're working 9 to 5. Okay, you want flexibility. Well, can you work 9 till 10? Not every day, you know, but can you say, look, I'm actually willing to support our customers out of hours. I'm willing to be able to flex. Yeah. So I'm going to put something on the table, because what I want to do is I want to look at a relationship here that allows us both to move. So I need to come to this debate looking to add into it, not to take it away.
Yeah.
So think about, if you want to make that shift, think about what you can do.
Look, I think you and I have talked about this topic on sort of the things that you can do as an employee to get ahead when you're working dispersed, or to do really well in terms of what you contribute to the organisation. I don't know, Gary, but I feel like that's maybe a conversation we should bring in next week or at some point in the future, and really dial in on that. I mean, you've been sending me a lot of stuff over the weeks about the kind of skills and the things that we need to do, which I think is your coaching of me. But I think that would be great to do. So on that note, Gary, I'm going to bail just because we're at time, and I think it's been a good place to leave it. Thank you so much.
No, we've not libeled anybody, Dave.
Well, yeah, okay.
So you wanted to keep the podcast going, didn't you?
I wanted to keep it going. Look, I mean, I tried to get some, you know, input from. Look, we tried Pret, we tried Starbucks, we tried Tim Hortons. You know, we'll keep going until we score. Yeah,
Tim Hortons.
On that note, I'm going to leave you, Gary, and say thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Dave.
And I'm going to say thank you to our real sponsors, who are, as ever, the fabulous Treble3, treble3.co.uk, who are still doing amazing things when it comes to digital. For all of your needs, it might be online, it might be digital print, but they are the guys, treble3.co.uk. I'm going to say, if you've enjoyed this conversation, actually, it's been quite cathartic for me. I've certainly enjoyed it. We'd love to get a like. We'd love your subscription if you haven't already subscribed. We're here every week. We hope to see you here back again, having the same kind of conversation. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully we will see you all next week.
There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioners' future. This is just one of them.